The day Richard Thornton handed my career to his son, I was troubleshooting a critical failure in our procurement database. 15 years of loyalty, and he delivered the news like he was asking me to move a stack of papers. "Hey Dave," he said, barely glancing up from his phone. "Quick update. Tyler starting Monday. He's going to need your office." Just like that. No discussion. No warning. Nothing. Tyler. That's his 26-year-old son who just finished his MBA and thinks he's qualified to run operations because he has 75,000 followers on TikTok and posts motivational content about disrupting traditional industries. I'm Dave Mercer, by the way. 49 years old, been running operations at Thornton Manufacturing since I left the Marines. Back then, I was a logistics coordinator at Camp Pendleton, managing supply chains for an entire regiment. When you're responsible for making sure 2,500 Marines have ammunition, food, and equipment in hostile territory, you learn a thing or two about keeping systems running under pressure. That military discipline never left me. In the Corps, we had a saying, proper preparation prevents poor performance. Everything I built at Thornton came from that philosophy. When I walked through those doors in 2009, the company was barely surviving. Their inventory management ran on software from 1995. Their supplier coordination was a collection of sticky notes and handwritten ledgers. Their regulatory compliance was whatever someone remembered to file before the government came knocking. I spent my first 18 months just mapping how this disaster worked. Thornton Manufacturing produces precision metal components, shafts, housings, valve assemblies for industrial equipment. 175 employees, mostly skilled tradespeople who knew their craft but couldn't navigate a spreadsheet to save their lives. That's where I came in. The thing about manufacturing is that everything connects to everything else. You can't upgrade one system without disrupting 5 others. So I built it all from scratch. Wrote custom integrations that linked our ancient inventory software to modern supplier portals. Created automated warnings when stock levels dropped below safety thresholds. Built manual workarounds for when vendors changed their data formats, which happened constantly. The compliance work alone nearly killed me. Manufacturing companies like ours report to OSHA, EPA, state environmental boards, and a dozen other agencies. Miss one deadline or submit incorrect data, and they'll shut your operation down before you can say, regulatory violation. I developed an entire tracking system that monitored every requirement, every deadline, every document that needed filing. Took me 4 years to perfect it. By 2014, Thornton was running like clockwork. Suppliers loved working with us because payments processed smoothly, orders were accurate, and someone always answered when problems arose. That someone was usually me, because I'd cultivated relationships with these people over years. Marcus at Great Lakes Metal knew he could reach me directly when shipments got delayed. Jennifer at Precision Hydraulics would text me personally when they had overstock we could acquire at discount. Richard Thornton never witnessed any of this. To him, the company simply functioned. Orders fulfilled, reports filed, vendors paid. He assumed it was all automated, that modern technology handled everything. What he didn't understand was that behind every automated process was roughly 150 hours of custom programming and another 75 hours of ongoing maintenance. Take our supplier payment workflow. On paper, it looked straightforward. Purchase order created, goods delivered, invoice processed, payment released. In practice, our inventory system couldn't communicate with half our suppliers' platforms. Invoice formats changed monthly. Delivery confirmations arrived by email, fax, phone call, and occasionally scribbled notes from delivery drivers. I had to manually verify every single transaction to ensure the numbers aligned. Our aluminum supplier alone used 4 different invoice templates depending on whether you ordered standard stock, custom specifications, expedited delivery, or bulk orders. Their system generated reference numbers that never matched ours, so I built a cross-reference database to translate them. When they migrated to new accounting software in 2019, I spent 3 weeks rebuilding the entire integration. Tyler didn't know any of this existed. To him, I was just some middle-aged guy who sat at a desk and stared at screens. He probably figured he could do the same thing faster, being a digital native and all. Richard stood in my office like he'd just solved every problem in the world. Finally looked up from his phone, seemed confused that I wasn't arguing. "Of course," I said. "That's it? Just, of course?" He nodded once and walked out, probably congratulating himself on handling that so professionally. I sat there for about 30 minutes, surveying the office that had been my command center for 15 years. My Marine Corps commendation hung next to 4 Safety Excellence Awards our division had earned under my leadership. The whiteboard where I tracked supplier delivery schedules. The secondary monitor where I kept compliance dashboards running continuously. Fine. Let them learn. I packed 3 items. My coffee thermos with the faded company logo, my personal notebook containing 15 years of passwords and supplier contacts, and the external drive that held every script, every automation sequence, every manual override that kept this place operational. Everything else, the dual monitors, the ergonomic chair Tyler would probably replace with some gaming setup, the small cactus that somehow thrived under fluorescent lighting, I left for him to figure out. Before leaving, I sent Patricia in HR a brief email, transitioning to remote work temporarily during office reorganization. Available via email if needed. Then I got in my truck and drove home. Didn't look back. Monday morning arrived and I watched from my kitchen table as Tyler posted his first day at the office. Kid brought a ring light to a manufacturing facility. Posted it on Instagram with some caption about bringing innovation to legacy industries. I nearly spit out my coffee. Here's the thing, nobody really understood what I did daily. They just knew that when suppliers called with problems, I resolved them. When compliance software crashed during audit season, it got fixed. When our largest client needed rush orders pushed through the system, it happened. They assumed it was all automated. Computers handling everything. What they didn't realize was that I'd spent 15 years constructing a custom ecosystem that appeared automated but actually required constant human intervention. Like our weekly operations summary that went out every Wednesday at 7:45 a.m. Tyler probably thought it generated itself. Truth was, I pulled data from 6 different systems, cross-referenced it with shipping schedules, manually adjusted for the seasonal patterns our software couldn't predict, and formatted it so the leadership team could actually comprehend the information. First warning sign came Wednesday morning. That operations summary didn't go out. Tyler sent an email asking where it was, copying half the management team like he was already in charge. I watched him scramble for 2 hours before he finally contacted IT. Poor Steve in IT spent 4 hours explaining that there was no automatic report generator, that Dave Mercer had been creating it manually for over a decade. I ignored Tyler's follow-up emails, made myself another cup of coffee, and started working on something more interesting. My consulting business plan. In the Marines, we called it institutional knowledge. The information that never gets documented because it's too specific, too situational, or changes too frequently to write down. Every unit has people like me who carry that knowledge in their heads. Lose those people without proper transition, and the entire operation collapses. That's precisely what was unfolding at Thornton, and I had a front row seat from my kitchen table. By Thursday, the first compliance crisis hit. State Environmental Board sent a routine inspection notice. Standard procedure requiring response within 72 hours. Usually took me about 30 minutes to pull the correct reports, verify the waste disposal updates, and submit the response. This time, Tyler spent the entire day trying to determine which forms to file and which disposal protocols they were even referencing. He called me Friday morning. "Dave, hey, quick question about the environmental compliance stuff. Where do we keep those protocols? I'm unavailable." "Right, but this is kind of urgent. State inspector is asking about our chemical waste procedures and I can't locate the documentation. Those would be in the compliance database. Password protected. Manual updates required monthly." Long pause. "What's the password?" "I work on retainer now. $175 per hour. 4-month minimum commitment." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll get back to you." He never did. By Friday afternoon, things got interesting. Great Lakes Metal, our primary supplier, flagged a delivery discrepancy. Their invoice showed 600 units of shaft assemblies delivered, but our system only showed 540 received. Simple data entry error, happens constantly. Normally, I'd cross-check the delivery receipt, verify the physical count with warehouse staff, and adjust the system within an hour. Tyler spent the entire day on it. Called the warehouse 4 times, emailed the supplier 3 times, and finally just approved the invoice without verification. Problem was, we actually had received all 600 units. The warehouse manager had logged them under the wrong product code. So now our inventory was wrong, our accounting was wrong, and we just paid for 60 units we couldn't locate in the system. That's when Marcus at Great Lakes called me directly. "Dave, what's happening over there? This kid doesn't understand your receiving procedures. Should I be dealing with someone else? I'm consulting independently now, Marcus. If Thornton wants me handling supplier relations, they know my rates." "Consulting? You should have told me sooner. We've been considering bringing someone in to streamline our accounts payable process. You available?" That conversation led to my first client. Great Lakes Metal hired me to audit their payment processes and implement some of the automation techniques I'd developed at Thornton. $14,000 for a 4-month engagement. Not bad for my first week as a consultant. Meanwhile, back at Thornton, Tyler was discovering that running operations wasn't about having impressive slide decks. The monthly supplier reconciliation was due, a process comparing our purchase orders against delivered goods against invoiced amounts. I'd automated roughly 65% of it, but the remaining 35% required manual review because suppliers constantly changed their formats, our inventory system had quirks, and sometimes warehouse workers just recorded incorrect numbers. Tyler tried running my automation scripts, but they failed because he didn't know about the manual pre-processing steps. The scripts expected data in specific formats, but half our suppliers had switched formats since I'd last updated the code. He spent 3 days attempting to debug it before giving up and just paying every invoice without reconciliation. By the end of week 2, more suppliers had contacted me directly asking if I was still managing their accounts. Word travels fast in manufacturing, especially when payments start getting delayed or processed incorrectly. Tyler posted another Instagram story from his office. Same ring light setup, but now he looked exhausted. Caption mentioned something about embracing the learning curve. The comments were mostly from his business school friends telling him how impressive he was. If they only knew. The funny thing was, Richard still believed everything was under control. Tyler was maintaining appearances, sending daily emails about optimizing workflows and implementing industry best practices. What he wasn't mentioning was that those optimizations were breaking more systems than they fixed. And those best practices were creating compliance problems that wouldn't surface for another month or two. But I knew they were coming. In the Marines, we learned that systems failures don't happen suddenly. They cascade. One small problem leads to another, then another, until the entire operation grinds to a halt. Tyler was creating those small problems faster than he could identify them, let alone resolve them. I just had to be patient and let gravity do its work. Month 2 was when the serious damage began appearing. Tyler had managed to crash our supplier payment system attempting to streamline it over a weekend. Kid watched some YouTube videos about process optimization and decided our payment approval workflow was too complex. So he deleted half the verification steps. Monday morning, for suppliers called asking why their payments were 3 weeks overdue. Turns out Tyler's streamlined system had been approving payments that never actually processed. The invoices just sat in digital limbo he'd accidentally created. Took Steve from IT 4 days to locate where the payments had gone and another week to process them manually. That's when Thornton lost their first major client. Anderson Industrial had been with us for 11 years. Solid relationship built on reliable deliveries and honest communication. When their procurement director, Margaret Chin, called about a delayed shipment, Tyler gave her corporate jargon about supply chain optimization and temporary processing delays. Margaret had heard that kind of talk before. It usually meant a company was in trouble. She pulled their contract the next day. $180,000 annual account. Gone. She sent me a LinkedIn message that same afternoon. Dave, heard you're consulting now. We need someone who actually understands manufacturing operations. Interested? That became my second client. Anderson Industrial hired me to audit their existing supplier relationships and recommend improvements to their vendor management process. Another $18,000 project. Plus, they introduced me to 3 other companies in their network who needed similar work. Meanwhile, Tyler was discovering that social media followers don't help when you're dealing with federal compliance audits. OSHA showed up for their annual safety inspection in mid-February. Routine procedure, but they wanted to see our updated chemical handling protocols, incident reporting procedures, and employee training records. I used to handle OSHA inspections effortlessly. Everything documented, filed properly, cross-referenced with relevant regulations. Takes about 2 hours to gather all the paperwork and walk the inspector through procedures. Tyler spent 4 days running around the facility trying to find documentation that didn't exist in the format OSHA required. Our safety procedures were all there, but scattered across different systems. Some in digital files, some in paper binders, some just in the heads of experienced workers who'd been doing things the same way for years. The inspector wasn't impressed. Wrote up 8 violations for inadequate documentation and gave Thornton 45 days to submit proper compliance reports. That triggered an automatic review by our insurance company, who promptly increased our liability premiums by 50%. Richard called me that afternoon. First time in 7 weeks. Dave, we've got a situation with the OSHA inspection. Tyler's struggling with the compliance documentation. Could you maybe come in for a day or 2, just to help us get back on track? I work on retainer now. 4-month minimum, $15,000 monthly fee. Long pause. $15,000? Dave, that's more than we paid you in 4 months. That's correct. But you used to get all my time and expertise. Now you get it when you pay for it. Same as everyone else. Everyone else? I've got 5 clients now, Richard. Anderson Industrial, Great Lakes Metal, Precision Components Incorporated, Parker Manufacturing, and Midwest Hydraulics. All companies that value experience over MBA credentials. Another pause. We need to discuss this in person. You can schedule a consultation. Standard rates apply. He hung up. That week, word really began spreading through the industry. Manufacturing is a small world. Procurement managers talk to each other. Suppliers know which companies are easy to work with and which ones are nightmares. When payments start getting delayed. When orders get processed incorrectly. When longtime employees suddenly aren't around anymore, people notice. Marcus at Great Lakes mentioned my consulting work to his counterpart at Superior Alloy. That led to another project. Jennifer at Precision Hydraulics recommended me to a company in Cleveland who needed help implementing a new inventory management system. By March, I was turning down work because I couldn't handle it all myself. That's when I made my first real business decision. Hired Nancy Peterson, one of the people Thornton had laid off in January. Best production coordinator I'd ever worked with. 18 years of experience, terminated because Tyler needed to right-size the workforce. She jumped at the opportunity to work with me. Then I brought in Steve Walsh, yes, the same IT manager who'd been at Thornton for 14 years before getting cut in the second round of layoffs. Steve knew every system in that facility like the back of his hand, could troubleshoot problems most consultants couldn't solve with manuals and training. We set up operations in my basement office and called ourselves Mercer Operations Consulting. Nothing fancy, but within 3 weeks we had 7 active projects and a waiting list of potential clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thornton was laying off experienced people to cut costs while paying me triple my old salary to consult for their competitors. Tyler was trying to run operations with an MBA and a ring light while I was building a business based on the exact expertise they decided they didn't need. But the best part was watching Tyler's social media presence evolve. Early posts were all confidence and corporate buzzwords. By March, he was posting motivational quotes about learning through adversity and growth mindset. The comments from his MBA friends got more generic, more supportive in vague ways. People could sense something wasn't right. End of March brought the quarterly numbers. Thornton's revenue was down 22% from the previous year. Operating costs were up significantly due to increased insurance, consultant fees, and inefficiencies Tyler's optimizations had created. 3 more major clients had switched suppliers, citing service reliability concerns. The stock price dropped from $38 to $29. Not catastrophic yet, but enough to get the board's attention. Richard called an emergency meeting with senior management. Word was some uncomfortable questions were being asked about the operations changes. Tyler wasn't invited to that meeting. But I was too busy to pay much attention. Mercer Operations Consulting was booked solid through July, with inquiries coming in faster than we could respond. Turns out there was significant demand for people who actually knew how manufacturing operations worked in the real world, not just in PowerPoint presentations. By June, Thornton was in full crisis mode. Tyler had managed to crash their main inventory system during a routine update that turned out to be anything but routine. For days of downtime meant they couldn't process orders, couldn't track shipments, couldn't even tell customers what they had in stock. The final straw came when their biggest remaining client, Industrial Dynamics Corp., pulled their contract after a shipment of hydraulic components arrived 3 weeks late with half the order missing. $320,000 annual account. Gone. Their procurement director sent me an email the same day. Dave, we need reliable partners. What's your availability? That's when Richard showed up at my house. I saw his Mercedes pull into my driveway through the kitchen window. Same guy who'd walked into my office 6 months earlier like he ruled the world. Now sitting in his car for 15 minutes like he was gathering courage to knock. When I opened the door, he looked like he'd aged 5 years in 6 months. Tie loose, hair disheveled, that corporate confidence completely vanished. "Dave," he said. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, let him in, poured myself a bourbon. Seemed like that kind of conversation. Didn't offer him one. He sat on my couch like he expected it to collapse beneath him. Started talking about temporary setbacks, growing pains, Tyler needing more time to adjust. All the corporate language you use when you're trying not to admit you made a catastrophic mistake. "The board is asking questions," he finally said. "Stock's down to $24. We've lost 35% of our major accounts. Insurance premiums are through the roof after the OSHA violations, and our operating costs are up 45% because we keep having to bring in consultants to fix things Tyler breaks." I sipped my bourbon and waited. "We need you back, Dave. Full salary restoration, better office, whatever it takes." "I'm unavailable." "Come on, be reasonable. This consulting thing is nice, but it's not a real career. You're 49 years old. You need stability, benefits, retirement planning." That's when I handed him the folder I'd prepared the week before. Annual report for Mercer Operations Consulting. 7 months in business. He opened it slowly, like he was afraid of what he'd find inside. Revenue projections. Client list. Growth metrics. His face cycled through about 6 different expressions reading it. $420,000 in billable revenue. He looked up at me like I'd just claimed to walk on water. In 7 months? 9 active clients now. Booked solid through December. Nancy and Steve are earning better money than they ever made at Thornton. And we're thinking about hiring 3 more people. But this is... He stopped. Stared at the numbers like they might change if he looked long enough. "This is more than we paid you in 4 years. Those clients don't think I'm just some old guy who stares at computer screens. They understand what 15 years of experience is worth. They know the difference between expertise and an MBA." Richard set the folder down on my coffee table like it weighed 100 pounds. "What do you want me to tell the board?" "Tell them you gave away your entire institutional knowledge base to hire a social media influencer. Tell them you thought 15 years of custom systems and supplier relationships could be replaced by a kid with a ring light. Tell them exactly what happened." He left without another word. 2 weeks later, Thornton announced Tyler was departing to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities. Corporate speak for, "We can't fire the CEO's son, but we can make him disappear." Word was the board had given Richard an ultimatum: fix the operations disaster or start looking for a new position himself. They brought in a consulting firm from Detroit to rebuild their systems. Cost them $250,000 over 5 months to recreate about half of what I'd built over 15 years. The other half, the supplier relationships, the institutional knowledge, the informal networks that made everything function, that was gone permanently. By Christmas, Thornton's stock had dropped to $19. They'd laid off another 40 people, closed their satellite facility in Cincinnati, and were rumored to be exploring acquisition options. 4 more major clients had jumped ship, and their insurance company was threatening to drop coverage entirely unless they addressed their compliance issues. Meanwhile, Mercer Operations Consulting was thriving. We'd moved out of my basement into a proper office space, hired 3 more consultants, and had a waiting list of potential clients. Industrial Dynamics became our biggest account. $95,000 annual retainer for ongoing operations consulting. Anderson Industrial referred us to 4 companies in their network. Great Lakes Metal brought us in to completely overhaul their vendor management systems. The best part wasn't the money, though. It was the respect. Suppliers who used to treat me like just another employee now called me Mr. Mercer. Clients asked for my opinion on strategy, not just technical fixes. After 15 years of being invisible, I was finally seen. 8 months later, I got a LinkedIn message from Tyler. He was working at a startup in San Francisco, doing social media marketing for a tech company. The message was brief. Hope you're doing well. Learned a lot from watching how you worked. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime and you could share some advice about operations management? I never replied. Some lessons you have to learn the hard way. These days, when young executives call me about optimizing their operations, I always ask the same question. Who's been keeping your systems running all these years? Because 9 times out of 10, they don't know. They think it's all automated, that modern software handles everything. What they don't understand is that behind every smooth operation is someone like me. Someone who knows which supplier to call when the system crashes, which manual override to use when the automation fails, which relationships to nurture so your business keeps running when everyone else's falls apart. That knowledge can't be replaced by an MBA. Can't be automated by software. And sure as hell can't be handed off to someone's kid just because they have the right last name. But they usually figure that out eventually. Right around the time their stock price starts dropping and their clients start calling me instead.